Wise with Us scholars, it's time for another one of those tests that we need to do, that on civil rights. Like the other tests, this will be an open note classwork and materials test. Have your materials ready and read through each question carefully and choose the best answer. Click on the video and pause it as you would like to listen again, to give you time to look up an answer. And as always, if any problems arise, please let your history teacher know. Good luck! Question 1. Which of the following, take 2. 1. Which of the following segregated public places? Was it the Civil Rights Act, Jim Crow laws, or the 13th Amendment? 2. Which of the following is false about the voting process faced by the Black community during this time period? They had to pass unfair literacy tests, they had no restrictions and were able to easily vote in the South, or they often had to pay poll taxes to vote. Which is the best description of civil disobedience? Acting out or protesting violently when faced with a problem, choosing not to follow an unfair law or policy peacefully, or all of these describe civil disobedience. 4. What were the main goals of the civil rights movement? End segregation in public places and gain voting rights. Gain opportunities in the workplace and pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Or gain better conditions for farm workers through unions and improve education. 5. What was the decision in the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court case? School segregation was illegal and schools must be integrated. Segregated buses were unconstitutional and must be integrated. Or separate equal facilities were constitutional and can remain segregated. 6. What inspired the Montgomery bus boycott? The beating of Martin Luther King Jr., the bombing of the buses in Montgomery, or the arrest of Rosa Parks? 7. Which civil rights leader argued for nonviolent protests to gain civil rights and organized the Montgomery bus boycott? Was it Martin Luther King Jr., Robert Abernathy, or Malcolm X? 8. How would you describe integration of Central High School in Little Rock? An easy process with little violence or media attention. Difficult because so many white people, including the governor, tried to stop the Little Rock Nine. Or difficult because the classes were too hard for them to get good grades. 9. What were the sit-ins used to integrate in Greensboro? Lunch counters, schools, or voting booths? 10. What impact did the Greensboro sit-ins have on the civil rights movement? They were the sole reason for President Kennedy's support of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They became a model for other similar types of protests and spread in the South, or they led to President Johnson's support for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 11. Which of the following best describes the Freedom Rides? The purpose of the Freedom Rides was to integrate interstate transportation. Members of the Black community took over buses and refused to let white people ride. Where the Freedom Rides started in 1991. When fewer people became willing to risk arrest in Birmingham, Alabama, who were willing to continue the protests? Churchgoers, school children, or police officers? What was an effect of the Children's March in Birmingham? Bull O'Connor remained in power in Birmingham. President Kennedy supported ending segregation and the Civil Rights Act. The children remained in jail until they turned 18. 14. True or false? During the voting rights drive, black and white college students spent the summer in Mississippi registering black voters and teaching members of the black community how to pass literacy tests. True or false? How did the Civil Rights Act of 1964 guarantee the protection of people's rights? It banned segregation in public places and discrimination in the workplace. It required equal opportunities in education and sports for girls. It guaranteed equal pay for equal work. How did the Voting Rights Act lead to fair and free elections? African Americans were allowed to vote for the first time. Literacy tests were outlawed, where the voting age was reduced from 21 to 18. True or false? 17. The Black Power movement began because some black Americans felt that the nonviolent movement was moving too fast. True or false? 18. Who supported self-defense and the creation of a separate state for the black community? Was it Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., or Greg Brady? 19. Which of the following arguments explains why someone might support a separate state for the black community? The desegregation of public places was happening quickly. Members of the black community would be in charge of their fate and would have better treatment in their own community. The United States government offered the black community the city of Cincinnati so it would be affordable to create. 20. What controversial action did the Black Panthers take during the Civil Rights Movement? They monitored the police and carried guns for self-defense. They wanted to create a separate state for African Americans, or they hosted a series of garage sales and bake sales to raise money. 21. What is redlining? The process of drawing a red line across neighborhoods deemed undesirable because people of color lived there. A red line on a map that showed where wealthy people and poor people live today. Both of the above describe redlining. 22. What was the impact of redlining? Black Americans were unable to get home loans because they lived in redline neighborhoods. White Americans were unable to get loans and prevented from buying homes. Or home ownership went up amongst all communities. 23. Which best describes the main goal of the Black Lives Matter movement? They wanted police reform and accountability. They want to create their own political party, or both of these are the main goals of the Black Lives movement, or the Black Lives Matter movement. 24. Which of the following gave women the right to vote? The 19th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act, or Title IX? 25. What were the main goals of the women's liberation movement? To end segregation in public places and gain voting rights. To gain opportunities in the workplace and pass the Equal Rights Amendment, or the ERA. Or to gain better conditions and pay for farm workers through unions and improve schools and education. 26. Which civil rights leader wrote The Feminine Mystique and founded the National Organization for Women, or NOW? Was it Dolores Hutzra, Phyllis Schlafly, or Betty Friedan? 27. True or false? The Feminine Mystique, the book The Feminine Mystique, was written to encourage women to stay home and remain feminine. True or false? 28. True or false? Radical feminists protested Mount Rushmore because there were no women on it. True or false? 29. Which of the following required equal access to education and sports for girls and women? Was it the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA? Jim Crow laws, or Title IX? Which of the following is not a goal of supporters of the Equal Rights Amendment or the ERA? For women to be protected under the law, for women to continue in their traditional roles as a caregiver, or for women to be given equal opportunities in society as men. 31. Which of the following was used as an argument against the ERA from the 1970s? The ERA would mean that women could be selected for the draft. The ERA would ruin family structure where women's role is primarily the homemaker or caregiver. Both of the above were used as arguments against the ERA. 32. True or false? The ERA was passed in 1972, but was not ratified into the Constitution due to not having enough states' approval. True or false? 33. What were the main goals of the Chicano movement, the Mexican-American civil rights movement? To end segregation in public places and gain voting rights. End discrimination based on someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. Or gain better conditions and pay for farm workers through unions and improve education. 34. Which civil rights leader organized a boycott and formed a union for migrant farm workers? Cesar Chavez, Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez, or Malcolm X? 35. How did the Chicano students protest inequality in schools? Hunger strikes, school walkouts, or freedom rides? 36. What did the Chicano students achieve as a result of their protest? Brand new school buildings, creation of Chicano Day to celebrate their heritage, or bilingual education in schools? 37. Which of the following were goals of the LGBTQ+ civil rights movement? To end segregation in public places and gain voting rights. To gain better condition and pay for farm workers through unions and improve education. Or to end discrimination because of someone's sexual orientation or gender identity. 38. What was the name for the firing of federal employees and those in the military that were homosexual during the Cold War? The Lavender Scare, Stonewall Riots, or the Federal Employees Protection Act? Which event began the modern LGBTQ+ civil rights movement? Was it the Lavender Scare, the Stonewall Riots, or the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell? 40. Which of the following was an achievement of the LGBTQ+ civil rights movement? Same-sex marriages are now allowed in the entire United States. The first openly gay homosexual president was elected, or both of these are achievements. That concludes the test, scholars. Have a good day.